everyone, my name is Colleen Parrott and I am the coordinator of social media and public relations here at the Space Foundation. I am here in Science on a Sphere, live in Colorado Springs, Colorado at the Space Foundation Discovery Center. Today we've got a lot to talk about. We're going to be talking to you all about the planet furthest from the sun, Neptune. Now I know some of you are thinking about Pluto. Don't worry, we're going to talk about Pluto just a little bit today as well. But we're going to be chatting about some fun planetary facts, the history and founding of Neptune, the only mission to go to the planet, and take a few questions and answers directly from you. But before we get started too far today, I have to introduce you to our very special guest. Today's special guest is Neptune. Neptune is actually my childhood stuffed animal. I've had him since I was about 6 years old. Now, the reason that he's here today is because when I got him, he didn't have a name. His name was actually Commonwealth Dayton Hudson Plush Puppy. That's a boring name for a kid. So as a kid, I paid attention to this little emblem that's here on his chest. It's an N, and there's a little moon right above it. So as a child, I decided to name him Neptune Night Star because of the N, and then obviously that moon meant it was nighttime, and so that was his name. Now, Neptune's always been a huge part of my life and the one stuffed animal that I've taken just about anywhere. And when I first got this job and I was being interviewed, I was asked, "Do you like space?" And I thought, everyone likes space. What kind of a question is that? And then they asked about the impact of space in my life, and I kind of thought the basic things like GPS. We all know that GPS has been helpful for us, but then I really started to think about it, and then I realized Neptune. I wasn't huge into space when I was a little girl, but obviously there was enough of a spark and enough of that imagination that I decided to name my best friend Neptune Night Star. So as you go through your day and you go through the weekend, I just want you to stop and think. Obviously, if you're watching this, you probably like space, but is there something more about space? Is there ways that it's impacted you beyond just the GPS and all the cool things that it does on our smartphones, other than making us go live and stuff like that? So I want you to think, do you have a Neptune in your life as we go through today? So let's go ahead and start talking about this wonderful planet behind me here. So Neptune is the 8th planet in our solar system from the sun, and it is the last planet. That's because right now, Pluto is still considered a dwarf planet. There's always rumors that it might become another planet again, or different things like that, but right now it is still considered a dwarf. So that makes Neptune the last one in our solar system. Neptune is actually not visible with the naked eye from Earth. It is really far away. It's 30 times the distance to the sun that we are here on Earth. It's actually 2.8 billion miles from the sun. So that's a really, really long ways away. Now, getting back to Pluto a little bit. The one thing that's really interesting to me is when we think of the orbits of the planets around the sun, not all of them are quite perfect circles. Some of those circles are a little misproportioned. So every 248 years, this is for those of you who think Pluto is still a planet, Pluto actually moves into Neptune's orbit, making Pluto actually closer to the sun for about 20 years of those 248. So in that time, it's actually closer to the sun. So if you think Pluto is still a planet, Neptune still has its moments where it's further from the sun than any other planet. Now, Pluto was reclassified as a dwarf in 2006. So, we can have that debate all day long. But there are times when Neptune is further away than Pluto is. Now, Neptune here is our 4th largest planet in our solar system. Now, to give you an idea about how big that is, you could take 60 Earths and then chuck them right inside of the middle here. So it's a good size. Now, in the other planets we've been talking about, Mars, Venus, Mercury, none of them had rings. Well, obviously it's not visible in here, and they're actually very hard to see anyways, but Neptune does have 6 rings. These rings are pretty unusual, and they're not very uniform, and they have 4 thick regions called arcs. And these arcs are basically just clumps of dust. Now, they think that these rings are probably relatively young and short-lived, and that's because they are just a little unusual. Now, again, we had no moons on Mercury, no moons on Venus. We had 2 last time when we talked about Mars, but Neptune here has 13 moons. There's actually a 14th one that was discovered in 2013, but it has not been officially recognized yet. So right now we're sticking with 13. Now a day here on Neptune, is actually pretty short. It's kind of like a Friday here on Earth. It's only 16 hours and 6 minutes of an Earth day. So it spins relatively quickly. But a year there takes 165 Earth years. So that's a really long time for Neptune to make its way around the sun. Now there's an incredibly thick atmosphere on Neptune. It is 74% hydrogen, 25% helium, and 1% of methane. There are particles of icy methane and minor gases in the extremities of the atmosphere, and that's what gives Neptune this beautiful blue color. Obviously, this Neptune wasn't named for his coloring since he's got red. He's more like Mars in that regard, but it's such a beautiful blue color, as you can see. So the atmosphere also contains icy clouds, and within those clouds, they've actually documented the fastest weather in our solar system, the fastest wind. It can go at 1,200 miles per hour. Now here in Colorado Springs, especially lately, we've had some really strong wind gusts. That's actually caused a lot of damage. Those wind gusts have gone over 100 miles an hour. That's 12 times as fast as what we've had here. So that's really, really crazy. I don't think we'd be able to live past that. So Neptune was actually predicted by mathematicians in the 1800s. There were 2 different mathematicians, John Couch Adams and Urbain Le Verrier. And they had used mathematics to predict that another planet existed past Uranus. So they knew about all the other planets except for this one, and there were some irregularities in the motion of Uranus that led them to think maybe another planet was crossing through the path of there. So they did some calculations, and in 1846, another German astronomer, Johann Galle, actually said for sure Neptune was a planet, and he's credited with the discovery of it. Now he actually wanted to name Neptune after Le Verrier. Le Verrier had actually published his predictions of Neptune being a planet, whereas Adams had not, but naming the planet something that didn't fall in line with the other namings of the planets wasn't okay with the astronomy community at the time. So as we've been talking about, all of the planets in our solar system except Earth are named after gods, and one goddess, of course, we can't forget Venus. So it is hypothesized that due to the beautiful blue color that you see behind me, that Neptune got its name from the god of the sea, the Roman god of the sea, Neptune. And we've of course been talking about the counterpart of the Greek mythology, and Neptune would be the equivalent of Poseidon. Now the moons, those 13 moons I talked about, they are named after ancient Greek sea gods. Now pretty much any time you have moons around a planet, they're given a kind of category, if you will, the same way that the planets are. So the largest moon of Neptune is Triton. And Triton is actually the son of Poseidon, or Neptune, and Amphitrite. The next moon is Nereid. Now the Nereids are actually 50 daughters of the sea god Nereus and Doris, and they were actually Neptune's attendants. Then the next moon is Naiad, and that is actually a group of Greek water nymphs, and these nymphs were guardians of lakes, fountains, springs, and rivers. Next we have Thalassa, who was a Greek sea goddess, then Despina, who was the daughter of Poseidon, Galatea, who was actually one of the Nereids, Larissa, who was a lover of Poseidon, and then we have Proteus, who was a Greek sea god. He was the son of Oceanus and Theseus. And lastly, we have Halimede, Pasamith, Seu, Laomido, and Neso, and those were all Nereids as well. And then last but not least, we have S/2004N1. That's that 14th moon that I mentioned earlier. Since it has not been confirmed to be a moon, it has kind of a boring numeric name right now. So Triton, the largest moon that I mentioned first, is actually about the same size as the moon we have here. And it's also the only one of Neptune's moons that is spherical. The others are all kind of funky shaped. One even looks a little bit like a potato. But it's also the only large moon in our solar system that doesn't rotate around the planet the same way that the planet rotates. So you can see just a little here that Neptune is rotating from my right to my left. So that means that Triton is actually rotating opposite that. It is going from my left to my right. Now, NASA believes that Triton may have actually been a dwarf planet that got captured in by Neptune, and that's why it has that retrograde orbit. Had it been formed around Neptune like most moons, it would follow that same pattern. So as I mentioned at the beginning, only one mission has ever actually visited Neptune, and that was in 1989, and it was Voyager 2. Voyager 2 just flew past Neptune and got some of the very first, well really the only very first pictures that we ever got of Neptune. And Voyager actually captured the Great Dark Spot. Now it's not visible here, but keep watching, and as Neptune rotates, you may notice a really dark blue spot. It's going to be kind of towards the bottom area here. Now, the Great Dark Spot was an incredibly large rotating storm system with those winds of up to 1,200 miles per hour. Those are, in fact, the strongest winds that we've had recorded in our solar system. But in 1994, the Hubble Space Telescope actually did some observations of Neptune as well, and what do you know? The dark spot is gone. So the wind probably tore apart that storm, but now there's actually two new different dark spots, but now they're in the northern hemisphere, so they're going to be towards the top area there. Now there's been some talk of possibly another mission, maybe around the 30s, that would go back to Neptune and Uranus, but at this time that has not been confirmed by any space agency. Right now, pretty much everyone around the world is really focused on Mars and trying to get mankind there. So, you know, it may not be in the future right now, but there can always be talks of us getting back there sometime in the future. Now, if we were to send another mission, that mission would basically have to be an orbiter. We talked about those a little bit last time. The orbiters are just going to go around the planet, a satellite, kind of like a moon. You probably wouldn't want to try to land there because really there's nothing to land on. Neptune is actually a gas giant, so there's nothing to land on. It's basically a big ball of gas, and once you make your way through those clouds and through the atmosphere, then it's really just hot liquid. And so if you did make it down there, those really harsh winds probably wouldn't let you live. It's really, really cold there, so that probably wouldn't work. And the atmosphere is pretty heavy, and that could actually squish you. So obviously we don't want that to happen, so don't try to go to Neptune anytime soon. Just a bit of advice. So now we have just a few questions that have been sent in by you, our wonderful viewers. First of all, we have a question from Tammy here in Colorado, and she wants to know, does it really rain diamonds on Neptune? How cool would that be? Just go to a planet, pick up some diamonds, make yourself a ring, some earrings, you know, whatever. Well, since we haven't actually been to the surface, and there isn't a surface, we can't say for sure. But science does say that it's extremely likely that there are diamonds being formed on Neptune. In the upper atmosphere, lightning can turn the methane that's in the atmosphere into a soot. As that soot falls down towards the core, the pressure increases. That pressure forms graphite. It's kind of like a sheet of carbon, similar to what you would find in a pencil that you use in school. The chunks of graphite then toughen into diamonds. So they're strong and they're unreactive. Now they're not going to be the real pretty diamonds that you find in the jewelry store. They would be uncut diamonds, but it's still theorized that there could just be diamonds all over. I think that that's really, really awesome. Sherry asked, why does Neptune appear to be blue? So we talked just a little bit about this already, but planets get their color from whatever they're made out of. It's their composition, basically. So Uranus and Neptune both get their bluish green color from methane. But Neptune here is a much more vivid and brighter blue. So that suggests that maybe there's an unknown component also in the atmosphere that's helping give it that beautiful blue color. Next, we have a comment from Preston in Mississippi, and I think that this is fantastic. He said that Neptune should sound the prettiest, and I would have never have thought that. And I would love to know what it sounds like on Neptune. I'm sure the tune is pretty awesome. So glad you could all join us today, and I'm glad that I could introduce you to my friend Neptune. Just remember that space is in our lives every day in so many different ways. And it's not until we actually stop and think about it, how it's influenced, even if it's nothing more than an N, and knowing that's the name of a planet, that there's space everywhere. This wasn't my favorite planet growing up. I always thought Saturn was pretty cool with the big rings that we can see. But I have to say Neptune is my favorite planet, and partially because of this little guy. So just stop and think about it, because space impacts us in so many different amazing, really cool ways. Even if it's artwork or the computer programs we use, it's everywhere. So we're going to be back in about 2 weeks, and we are going to be celebrating the spring equinox. And so what are we going to be talking about next time? The sun, the one star in our solar system that we all rotate around. So start thinking about your questions. If you have those questions now, please go ahead and throw them in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to our lives to make sure that you know every time we're live and everything that we're talking about. And thank you so much for coming with us today. Have a great weekend.